Welcome to the Startup Operator podcast. I'm Roshan Cariappa. On this episode of the Engineering Manager series, Augustus and I spoke to Ajey Gore, who is an operating partner at Sequoia, India. Ajey has had an amazing career. He was head of technology at ThoughtWorks, then founded a couple of technology startups. And in his last role, he was group CTO at Gore, which is Southeast Asia's super app. We spoke about his journey thus far, what he's learned, how he is comfortable with failure, some of the technology challenges that he's helping startups solve in his current role at Sequoia, the skill one needs to develop in order to be a great engineering manager, and a bunch of other things. Einstein is quoted to have said, the definition of genius is taking the complex and making it simple. And I was reminded of this quote while talking to Ajey. You'll hear him explain the most complex things like maturity models or building microservices with wonderfully relatable anecdotes and examples. This was a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure you'll like it. Hey, Ajey, welcome to the Startup Operator podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks a lot. Actually, I'm glad that you guys invited me. I'm super humbled and honored to be here.
Well, as I was saying, you're among the most requested guests on the podcast. So really good to have you here and really looking forward to an exciting conversation.
Yes, hopefully it will be exciting. Let's say. So the thing is, I think there are a lot of stories, and those stories are always of like, how did we fail many times? And those stories are always interesting, correct? To make something, you have to try and fail many times. So I think I am right now today. I am the culmination of all those failures. That's what I am.
That's a wonderful way of putting it, actually. So this podcast will focus on various aspects of, what makes a great engineer, how do you hire one, and most importantly, how do you retain them in your startup? We'll delve into the various nuances of that. But before that, just to set the context, could you give the audience like a brief background in terms of your work thus far? You've been a founder, a CTO, and of course, a highly sought after advisor. In that journey, what have you learned?
I have crazy journey, right? And it's like if you take a bucket of water and throw it on the floor, or throw it on the floor, and it finds a way. And sometimes it's like, how did it find the slope and flow, right? And I'm that kind of person. Every time, whatever I have done, I have tried to put myself in very uncomfortable position. I always love to challenge what a status quo is. And one of the things which always made sense was around how do you go about doing things? How do you go about doing things, and how do you go about making things happen? So given that, I think we are pretty good in terms of what happens, what goes on. And at one point of time, you say, okay, this is too comfortable, let's move on. So I started my journey as a graphics designer in a very small town in Allahabad. And then I helped my brother doing desktop publishing. And then I built computers. And then somehow I got into a place called National Center for Software Technology to study computer science or study software. Very fortunate that I got into that. And it was 1 year course, and actually kind of squeezed me like anything, and took every juice out and taught me how many ways you can fail, how many ways you can feel idiot and stupid, right? And I think since then I'm trying to feel idiot and stupid. So that what it means is I'm trying to surround myself with way more smarter people than I am. And that kind of puts you on a very good trajectory, right? So if you look at that, and then I was in a company, I joined National Center for Software Technology, worked on a bunch of things over there. Then I joined a company called ThoughtWorks. It's a very unique company where I get to challenge myself almost every 1.5 years. I did different roles 1.5 years. And from there, I said, okay, it's enough. We did enough consulting. Let's go and do a startup. Went in startup, then something happened, and no, let's not do the startup. Let's do our own consulting company, our own product company. So did that for 2-3 years. Then that was getting a little bit comfortable. So somewhere Sequoia came in. They introduced us to a bunch of companies, and one of them was Gore. So we worked with them, and they said, why don't we acquire you, acqui-hire you? So they acqui-hired all of us. Again, got into a very uncomfortable position, never did a product, right? And that thus continued for next 5 years, and we've seen a lot of good accidents, a lot of good serendipity, and a lot of luck. Gore kind of became a behemoth, and we all chipped in the way we could. So I was very fortunate to have those kind of people So I took over as role as group CTO for Gojek 5 years back, helped my team, they helped me, and that's who I am today. And then after 5 years, I was like a little bit exhausted, little bit like health was wrecked. So took a break a little bit. And again, the mission was to like only 2-3 things. Like I should be able to spend more time with family. I should be able to give back to community, and I should be able to do some meaningful strategic work. And Sequoia, being a very nice company, they offered me a very nice job. And again, it was completely out of my territory. Again, very uncomfortable here in that sense. And trying to learn my ropes over here, trying to learn my tricks. I'm still learning. So it's like after like 22 years, I'm again back to a fresher's job where I'm trying to understand what I'm doing over here. And it's pretty interesting. It's very interesting and very, amazing to see so many founders trying to do so many things. It's like whole, ideas pouring in, and like magic quadrant is moving on, and like people creating so many startups. It's like just amazing to see this. So right now I'm trying to help as much as I can. So that's what my last 25 years are. Yeah. So did many things. And the thought process was to do something crazy. I'm very optimistic person. I like a lot of time my colleagues and my friends said like you say yes to many things. I'm very optimistic, non-conflicting person. I always believe. I play a bunch of strategy game, and 2 of them are my favorite is chess and AOE. If you do practice enough in AOE, Age of Empires, you can win. But chess, if you lose 1 or 2 pieces, but if you think very strategically, you may be able to win, right? Like I'm not very good chess player, but yeah, good enough chess player. So that what happens in that kind of gives you a very optimistic view in the life as well, is that if you put enough good effort, I think things will be fine. Things will be fine. So as long as you are uncomfortable, surrounded with good, smart people, you'll be okay. So that's what it is. Nothing much, dude.
So you can lose a pawn or two, basically, in the wider scheme of things, right? So I think the theme of your journey thus far has been like, being comfortable with chaos, embracing new things, embracing not being afraid to fail, and so on. So which is, I think, a fantastic takeaway for all of us, right? So you mentioned your new role at Sequoia, right? As an operating partner technology. You get to talk to a wide variety of startups. You see how people are executing on various different axes. What are some high-level challenges that you're solving in this role?
As I said, I'm just discovering, right? So one of the things which I'm trying to do is how do I meaningfully help our startups? And that is a challenge for me, not for the startups. And there are multiple things we can do, right? And where we can really shine. There is we go and partner with a lot of startups and we understand what they do. But I think one of my mission or my agenda is that if we can tell them, so whenever people say, Ajey, tell us what is your success like mantra or whatever, like things. And I said, I don't have any of that. What I can tell you what not to do. I always say I'm that monkey who got slaps on face multiple times. So now I'm that trained monkey who knows where to go and where not to go. So mostly what I'm trying to do is somehow putting effort around documenting this. For example, I'm looking at things like maturity models in terms of software engineering processes. So let's take a very simple view. Like how do you create an MVP which aims towards not only what does MVP mean? First is that like it is testable, it is lovable, it is usable product, right? But apart from that, it should also address some part of PMF or some way it should take you to product market fit, right? So what can we do or what we should not do to accelerate that MVP? That is one maturity model you can think of, right? Very small things like for example, there are always these discussions like what should we build versus what should we buy? How do we create this? We are in this age. I was talking to a webinar yesterday, and I was told them the same thing, saying when I started my career in software engineering, we were like builders. We used to build everything. Like if we look at 20 years back, it was either Microsoft or Linux came later on. So I don't know how many of people know Microsoft Developer Network, MSDN, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, like huge books. And you have to go through those huge books to understand how Windows works and how do you send message and how do you click on button, what happens, right? And there's a Microsoft Foundation classes and all this stuff. And from there you go to Java and JDK and J2EE, and everything was like big manuals. Today it's Stack Overflow. or like something else, or like something else. So today is like one click in Chrome or Google or Microsoft or Firefox address bar away, and then you have results, right? And that point of time, we had to build everything on our own. The GPL was just coming up, open source was just flourishing. But down the line, 20 years now, today, even 5 years to now, the SaaS, software service works, the ecosystem has blown up. Kubernetes did not exist 5 years back. Golang did not exist. Kafka did not exist. Containers became mainstream, while containers have been there since like 2004, 5, 6. So now we are in area or age of prefabricated components, let's say that. Correct. And in that prefabricated components, what you do, you play a role of assembler and builder both. And that striking that balance between being assembler versus being a builder is something you always, slippery slope for software engineers. Because for us, since we know programming, everything is, we can build everything, right? Whether it is the smallest possible image service or chatbot or like image recognition or like proxy or whatever, we can build everything. And that's where, and we also take pride in building things ourselves. Like if you, I'll tell you this, and I'm guilty of that same thing. If you ask a techie to create a blogging website, he will choose some static file generator, some CSS framework, or write CSS himself and struggle for like 4 or 5 weeks and then build a beautiful blog, right? Other person will go to a blog generation site or something like that and just build the blog with the most amazing effects and responsive everything in like 2 days, correct? So that's the difference between us and them, but we still take pride, right? So one of the things which I'm trying to do right now is come up with this playbook and go towards this, like ask these startups saying, what do you do? Do you have very good testable automated product process? If you don't have that, then plug these things in. These are the components which you can use. For example, one of the most common thing is like people, first thing they want to do when they do a startup is register a domain name. And second thing they want to do is implement login and password immediately, right? Sign up to. And I say, for those two things, like it's true. We spend so much time thinking about domain name. Sometimes the startups,
it's almost funny. Exactly. It's almost funny how long, building auth takes in every single project. It's like the same thing that's repeated over and over again.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like, so nowadays I give this advice saying, if you are doing this, don't implement login yourself, don't implement auth yourself, just use OAuth. And because those companies who are providing OAuth free of cost, first of all, and they may charge you from point of time, but they know how to detect fake users. They can actually save you from DDoS on authentication and many things, right? They will do MFA as well for you for free of cost or a very minuscule amount. So those kind of things. So what I'm trying to do right now is create this maturity models and playbooks, which will end up creating a technology landscape. I don't know how many of you have seen CNCF landscape, which talks about everything in Cloud Native Foundation, right? So let's say we have like everything in ecosystem, startup ecosystem. Like what are things? Let me ask you this question: what all things you require or you need to consider when you're building a startup? Let's say that. And a lot of times we may not be able to say all the things, but if you start from there, we start from like authentication, then user, then segmentation, tracking, user authentication, user communication, there are SMS, VoIP, chat. Then we have CDN, where the blog, multimedia files, hosting, images, videos. Then we have communication again, which is like email, SMS, VoIP, PubNub, notifications. Then we have build, test, deploy, which is testing, building, and deployment. Then on top of it, we have like product tools, like how do you manage stories? How do you manage knowledge base? Then we have cloud, and then when we grow a little bit more, then people come to infrastructure as well, like automation, deployment, secrets management, monitoring, tracing, correct? A lot of plethora of SaaS. And suppose you become very successful, become like $300-400 million company, then you will start thinking about ERP, CMS, CRM, business intelligence, dashboards. A lot of things are there. Now think about this. If we in next 6, 9, 12 months be able to give you some maturity models across different stages of startups, and then give you a technology landscape or prototyping landscape saying at every time when you want to take a decision for build versus buy, here are 3 options for you. You can choose one of those 3 options and have fun. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. So hopefully in next maybe 6, 12 or 18 months, or maybe 24 months, I will be able to come up with some things where we can, because we see these patterns again and again and again, as Augustus says, that login and authentication is everywhere. So, and people should know that they can use anything, but we will get perplexed. And there are a lot of stacks as well, like somebody is on Node.js plus React, somebody on React plus React Native, somebody on Django plus front-end Flutter, somebody's Rails, and some front-end and something else. So there are a lot of combinations, and then you have Postgres and Mongo, SQL or no SQL, caches or no caches, proxy, which proxy, NY or HA proxy, like there are tons, right? And I'm getting like pretty much excited about that. So point is, if you can think about this way, and that can be holy grail. Think about this. So you come to Sequoia and you say, hey, I am using Django. I love JavaScript, and I am gonna build this kind of thing. So we say, okay, we recommend that you should use TypeScript instead of JavaScript. So you are much safer. You can choose to have, if you're very good at TypeScript or React Native, you can use that, or you can use Flutter as well if you want. If you are not having very fancy thing, if you're not developing mobile games. On backend, if you're good with Python, use Django, so you can provide more RESTful APIs. If you're good with Ruby, so why don't you use Chef and Rails and this and that and get done with it? And on top of it, when you have components, use this for this, use this for this, use this for this, and use this for this, and you're done. So basically, we allow you an assembly playbook, or like a user manual which comes with a self-assembling furniture. Let's put it that way. So that's my long answer for your very small question.
Wow. No, that sounds super interesting. And I know that there's a ton of decision fatigue, right? Especially in the early days. As you rightly mentioned, it's a choice. Every step is a choice. And these choices have fundamental consequences, right? So understanding the consequence of your choice and understanding what trade-offs you're actively consuming is a very key component to building a successful startup, right? So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about the principles to use in deciding between one or the other, either tool or technology, and how this varies along the maturity of the product itself, from MVP to post-product market fit to scale and so on. I know, I'm sorry, it's a very long question, and I know that you can probably spend hours on a session covering it, but if you can probably give us the high level 2 or 3 things that one can keep in mind.
I actually did a presentation on this long back. I'm just looking at the presentation, but let me tell you this. Think about this. It's not about question is what we should build versus what we should buy. It's not that at all. Problem is, we are so occupied a lot of times whether we could, can we do it, whether we could, right? And so that we never end up thinking, yeah, whether we should or not. And that is the first thing, correct? And second thing is, a lot of time people don't do this value mapping. What I call a value mapping is you need to define your core versus non-core. I'm going to share, can I share something on the screen?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So you see this right now. Well, think about this. What to say, there's a very simple flow for, say, a B2C website where we have user, which has login. Let me put it this way. If I present this over here, if you look at this user, then you go to login. From there, you have to go to authentication, then you have login form, then you have authentication tokens, which goes to catalog service, which goes to image service, compute, image optimization, image storage. There's one simple catalog display stuff, right? Now, how do you know which components to build versus which components to buy? Correct? It's very simple, right? So put this in this context where how much it is visible to user and how much it is invisible to user, and how much it is custom commoditization, how much is commoditized, and how much is your own genesis, right? If you put it that way, and if I replay that entire, it will something look like this, where UI is very much visible to user and it's your own genesis. Catalog service is very much invisible to user because it's backend service, but it's also there for you. Then you have user, then you have login. Then login form is visible, but it's also very customizable. Authentication is very much commoditized right now. Compute is very much commoditized right now. So now what happens, the more on the right-hand side you look, the more you go towards buying. More on the left side and lower corner, lower left you look, it's more around building your own stuff, correct? So these are worldly maps. So you can use worldly maps to actually do this kind of stuff very simply. So basically what you're going to define is what is your core and what is your non-core. For example, I ask this question, so what are you building? So somebody will say, oh, I'm building, say, let's take example. I'm building EdTech. I'm building a solution for tutors, correct? And suddenly there is a chat comes in, which you're talking to users and all this stuff. And then I say, this is very, very close because users is part of core workflow. And it's very much required for user, but is it commoditized? And the answer is yes, it's commoditized. Then you should not be building the chat. You should be buying the chat, correct? But within the chat, you have a lot of stuff which is like understands the emotion. You put AI and all stuff. Should you be building that? It is not that much commoditized and it's very context sensitive for us. For example, it's an Indian or Southeast Asian language, very different NLP. Maybe we had to build it first time ourselves. So let's build it inside. But then this question comes: do we need that insights right now? Like, can we do away with those insights, or can we do something without can we anonymize those chats and let humans read those chats for now? Let's anonymize those chats, remove all the names, and let human read those chats so they can understand what emotions are going inside right now. And if you look at that case, then I call it human in the loop. And once you say, no, now we have like 100,000 chats happening every day, or 10,000 chats happening every day, and we cannot do it with humans anymore, or we cannot do it with people anymore. Yeah, then let's start building this thing out. So the thing is, you always have to optimize for time and finding more product market fit. The faster you get to that, because product market fit is not just like user love you, but also you remove a friction of their lives. I say, what is a product, right? What we build in software. We somewhere remove the friction in people's life by providing them a software product. I don't know whether you guys actually booked the railway tickets standing in the queues ever. But when the first IRCTC came, or you purchase airline tickets going to agent, and then first book make my trip came, what happened in India, right? They removed the friction, and that friction was around time and around experience and a lot of things, right? So having a better experience is what product friction is. But just taking an offline process to online is not something very good. I have seen a lot of places where they ask you to fill this form every year, but they ask you the same, your name, your this. What they can do instead, they can allow you to log in to their portal and fill everything else for you anyway. If you have to change something, you change. But your personal particulars, you don't have to fill every year, right? You have to fill your address. Don't have to. You take my address. You don't have to fill it again. So that is where offline to online thought process. You can actually take this advantage of computers. The computers remember everything. So you can take advantage of that and then do different experience. But coming back to your question of build versus buy, I think people should think about what they need to assemble from commodity of software and what they have to build as their USP or as their moats. So that's what I do. That's what I would suggest, and that's what I would recommend.
Very interesting, Ajey. And I really like that approach of, charting out the visibility and the commodity and seeing, I think that's a good way to analyze what makes sense to build and buy. Something which I found interesting and I wanted to ask you is that UI, the visibility side of things, right? How does that factor in? Like, would you think that, the components that are more visible should be built, or, how does the visibility side of things factor into the build versus buy decision?
Visibility means not only visible to user, but very close to user, whether you can feel it or not.
Got it.
Correct?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not only visible to user, but it's whether user can feel it. Like, for example, sending SMS is very much visible to user. But what is visible in that? The copy of SMS is more important than the actual SMS, right? Who sends SMS? Nobody cares, right? I'll give you a simple example. Suppose a simple button appears which allows you to do anything on your mobile, whatever you wanted to do. A button, you say book a car, that button, and it automatically figure out where you are, and it knows by looking at your calendar that evening you want to go there, and just book the car to, like, you get this options in our cab booking here, car to home in evening, car to office in the morning, all that stuff, right? That comes from consumer empathy. Like, you need to be able to, so we need to change our way of thinking, saying, here is what we do. Here is what we can do. That is one way of thinking. That is the first way of thinking. Second is way of thinking, what can we do for you? It's very different. So here is what we can do is like, hey, you can book the cab, you can get the food. But once you change it to what we can do for you, it's like, hey, you have been eating Chinese noodles every Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Do you want me to order a Chinese Hakka noodles, but from this place? Correct? That is what we can do for you. That I'm trying to guess the intent of the user. Correct? That is consumer empathy. Now that button, what we can do for you button, like get me food button, it doesn't matter whether it's rendered by Flutter or React Native or a plain HTML. Users do not care. As long as that button does its job, that's what it matters. So the thing is, then you need to spend a lot more time how to make that button visible and effectively very responsive, and then choose the right tech for it. So most of time, like you can send any SMS. You can send an SMS with the 2-line, here's your OTP. But you can send since you have 140 characters, you can send SMS, here's your OTP. Please just do not distribute this OTP to anybody, and we do not call you to get your OTP. You can add something more to it. Correct? You can have 3 characters in front of those SMS, GKL or whatever, AYG dash something, and then you represent the same thing on the screen saying, do you see these 3 characters over there as well? That means the SMS has come from the same source. Those kind of things. So the point is, user visibility is more around what user not only see, but what user perceive and what user feel, what user hear, all the rest.
So it's more about experience than interface itself in that sense, right? So
Yeah.
Right. So there's often this debate about quality and speed, right? I mean, obviously startups are asked to, grow at crazy pace, acquire hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of users and so on, right? And things are bound to break. So when you talk about quality and speed, how should one go about balancing this? Should one prioritize one over the other? Or, what are some principles to keep in mind in terms of that?
Those two go hand in hand. They are not mutually exclusive. It's not like you can actually optimize for quality and not optimize for speed, or you could just go for speed and ignore the quality. You can't do that, right? They both go hand in hand, and that's where that balance is where the beauty lies, and that's where we should spend a lot of time. That what are we looking at, right? How are we thinking about this? What is the thing which actually will make the most important, most needle moving impact on user? Right? Because the thing is, if you try to optimize for one, you will lose the second one. So you have to bring that one balance where you say, I'm gonna optimize for feature set and experience, and maybe I'll not optimize for quality, which is perfectly fine. But you should always remember, every time you actually make a compromise on quality, or every time you make a compromise on anything else apart from quality, then what happens? It actually comes and bites you back at some point of time in a crazy way, right? And if you don't optimize for that, then things will not go the way you want it them to go, right? So one thing which I always say is you need to have this yin and yang balance all the time. So you have to say, okay, we're gonna go optimize for speed, but that means we are making this compromise. Why do you say quality or cost? Let me take a step back. Every product solution has 2 ways to deliver it. One is tactical, one is strategic. In software engineering, we call it one is monkey patching and one is ideal solution, right? You can do monkey patching, but you know what monkey patching you are doing, right? In Hindi mein they call it thukpatti and bandage or whatever you call it, right? Point is, every time you put a bandage, it's going to get ripped off at some point of time. So you need to be able to understand. So the way we do it is like we always looking at the repaying the tech debt. Every time you compromise on quality, you are creating tech debt. Even though you are not creating tech debt, you are creating a software with keeping in mind with 100 users or 1,000 users. You can't over-engineer as well, correct? You should not over-engineer. You shouldn't build 10,000 user solution with like all distributed queues and all stuff. I always tell people the good way to start a startup is to start with monolith, no microservices, nothing. And then see, because the software is very malleable, it can evolve over the period of time, right? For example, you are building a car and you can say, I'm going to focus on building tires first. And you will never ask why I'm building a car. So you are building a car to take person from point A to point B, correct? And there has been very good, there was very good blog about it. I don't remember where I read this very beautiful blog, very nicely, and they talked about MVP for multiple companies around that. So let's say we are building a car, and cars basic premise is to take people from point A to point B. But if you're gonna spend a lot of time, first 1 year creating beautiful tires without any chassis, without anything, that MVP is useless. That quality, you got quality, but nothing else. But why don't you build a skateboard and then build a bicycle? Yeah, it's not AC, it's not automated, you have to pedal it. Then you make a motorcycle. Now it's automated, but it's still not AC. Then you make a small car, then you make a big car, then you take it somewhere, right? In real life, you can't do it, but think about in software, you can always do it.
Right.
Software is so malleable.
It's like growing along the axis of utility rather than features, right? So
yes.
Right. Yeah, Augustus, you had a question.
Yeah, I was thinking about, you mentioned technical debt, and inevitably it somehow seeps in no matter what good decisions are made. What is your take on, like, so when startups are like, most startups are like have to move at a really fast pace, and there's always a lot of pressure from multiple angles to like deliver stuff on a quarterly basis. How do things like, for example, refactoring a code base fit in, right?
Always.
Because that doesn't really add a lot of value. I mean, by value, I mean visible value probably, because there's not much difference from the user experience. But how do you like justify that? I'm curious to know how you've like balanced out things like, refactoring and maybe even a rewrite of some, microservices or whatever, versus delivering, things that are more visible, especially at a higher leadership level.
Tell me, whenever you do a refactoring, whenever you create something new or you rewrite something, is it gonna do anything good for business?
Yeah, I think in the long term, definitely.
It will do something good for business, right? Can you articulate what good it's gonna do?
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, the problem is a lot of time we do not put enough effort to relate that to a business metric. We should always do that. For example, you want to refactor something which will make a very good SDK. So people do not have to rewrite the entire some code again and again and again. You make it very generic. That means you're going to save some time of people. Suppose you save 10 minutes per day of your developer. And suppose they work only 200 days a year. Let's take 200 days a year. That means you are still saving 2000 minutes, correct? If you look at 200 minutes, it's more than a day. A day has 1440 minutes. So it's like 1.5 days on an average. Suppose you have 100 developers, you saved 150 days. Suppose you have 300 developers, you saved 450 days. That means you saved a year of work of human effort, which goes into it. That means you will be able to deliver something better. Point is, that is just very, very plain level. But lot of time, in my experience, around 90% of time or 95% of time, whatever refactoring you do, it is actually very strategically beneficial within 3 to 6 months. And you should be able to articulate that. The problem is we don't put that business hat on us. We don't think like business champion. One of the things which we have to, which is the extra mile we have to walk, is that we need to become business champions. And we need to be able to understand business and then tell business why we are rewriting this. For example, suppose you are rewriting something which is gonna, I can say, like one of the things which we have right now is food delivery, which is very good going on right now in COVID. If you can shave off 1 minute per delivery, and you suppose you have 50,000 drivers in say Bangalore or Delhi or wherever, right? That means you are shaving off like 50,000 minutes per day. That means and if suppose it takes like 25 minutes to do one delivery, that means you can do 2,500 more deliveries in a day. That is good thing. So you kind of increase somewhere some revenue. So point is, we should be able to articulate in a way where business understands why we are doing things. A lot of times we don't do that. And I believe that every time if you put enough effort, you should be able to do that.
Very interesting. And something else which I found really interesting, what you said, you said that you encourage startups to always start with a monolith. That is something which is very interesting, and it's something which I have also like followed, and many times with my tech friends, right? It's easily criticized because I'm not using the latest school technology or the latest way of architecting things. Having said that, in your experience, how do you like go about, or for example, let's take this example of microservices versus monoliths. When do you go about telling your startups that, hey, it's time for you to rethink your architecture, or or that pattern of decisions? How do you advise startups to go about thinking, on that pattern of decisions?
I think if people read enough books, I say books are again culmination of many years of experience, which you can get in like 4 hours. So there are a bunch of very good books. One of the good books is Philosophy of Software Design by John Esterhout, right? It talks about how software is architected and how you can have abstraction and all stuff. Which, like, there is a very good paper by, forgot, it's called No Silver Bullet, Fred Brooks, something like that. It was written in 1975, and that paper still holds very good. There is no silver bullet to actually fix anything. The beautiful thing about software is always decoupleable. You can always decouple the software parts, and you can also create a very good abstraction out of it. So for example, when you're in monolith, writing, and one feature gets super huge popularity, correct? What you can do, you can deploy that feature instance multiple times. And if that /API request comes, just go to those instances so you can scale. At one point of time, you can rip off every other code and just have that feature specifically only that part of code living over there, right? Whether it's like Django, Node, or Rails, or Java, or whatever, you can just deploy that part. That is your first small microservice. At one point of time, then what you can do is so the thing is, you should think about a traditional restaurant versus a fast food chain. That's what I would say. Traditional restaurants and microservices. Suppose you are the pani puri wala. So you take the order, you prepare the pani puri, and you give it. That is monolith, right? Now what happens? You become very popular. So what is the first thing you're gonna do? Tell me. You're gonna hire a cashier or token guy who will issue the tokens. So token issued, then that guy comes and he is in queue, and he comes and presents the token to you, and then you fulfill his order. Let's take example of, say, fast food burger chain. You go to cashier takes money and says okay to you, and you're waiting now. Microservices is the same. You say, hey, I want a driver, and they say, okay, wait, and they tell somebody behind saying, hey, this guy needs a driver, this guy needs a food, this is the order. Then that guy goes and tells merchant saying, prepare this order. Merchant after 5 minutes says, oh, we accept your order, prepare. So you get a notification saying your merchant has started preparing your order. After some time, a driver is reaching your restaurant. What is happening behind the scenes is these messages are passed. So think about this. You are a single owner of restaurant and you become very popular restaurants. So you first get a cashier, then you get somebody, pani puri means you get somebody to mix water, and he'll keep giving you more and more water. Is that water is over, give me more water. Water is over, give me more water. And somebody will just serving those things. So basically you start message passing. And that's what happens. And that's where you know. So basically, if you got good volume, you will know when to do this. And for that, reading books really helps a lot. So one of my requests is please read as many books as you can, because those are the much better advice than what I can tell you.
Right.
Because I can give you crap analogies all over the place.
So any that you would recommend, Ajay, any others?
So if you look at the books which we really, in terms of software design, correct? So pragmatic bookshelf and find many books around that. But Mythical Man Month is very good. Goal is very good. No Silver Bullet is a very good white paper which you can read. Philosophy of Software Design, Patterns of Enterprise Architecture from Martin Fowler, Continuous Delivery, DevOps book. Google Site Reliability Engineering books are very nice. And then there are microservices books out there. So point is, there's so many books. My view is that people should read books on patterns and architectures, because that's where we'll tell them where are the common templates are and what they can closely related with. Like a lot of people, I hear a lot of people don't read design patterns nowadays, and reading just design patterns will help you a lot. So so those are the things. Like Gang of Four books are like very, very good, right? And that is something people just read. So yeah, those are my basic reading list. But then there are more, like in product design, there is Contagious, and there is the growth handbook is there from Elad Gill, which came years back. So there are a lot of books actually. I can keep talking about books. I don't want to actually.
Right, we'll link them in the description. How does a non-technical founder, someone who's listening right now, figure, how to hire the best CTO or VP engineering, head of engineering for their startup, who is capable enough to follow all of this advice and make the right decisions? So any thoughts on, CTO hiring and so on?
How do you know somebody is a good musician?
Well, you listen to them play.
Good. Have you ever met a musician who does not love music?
Rare. Very rare.
Rare. Okay, good. And the people who love music and their music is good, they're good musicians, right? Same with chefs. Have you ever met a chef who does not love cooking? Or same with dancers, same with singers. So
Right.
as if you believe that software is a craft, it's an act of creation. So if you believe software is an act of creation, then you should meet people first who can demonstrate you their craft. I have never seen any musician retire or any painter retire or any chef retire. I never seen that. They'll create music as long as they can. They'll sing as long as they can. Like they'll cook food as long as they can, right? Artisans never leave their job. So first is that. Second is there will be evidence of what they have done publicly available. Something, some book, some not book, some blog, not blog, some tweet, not tweet, some GitHub profile. So first thing is that. Second is, can you trust them? Because trust is a very important thing. Third is, are they curious enough? And what is their track record? I wouldn't like, so I'm very opinionated and take this with very pinch of salt, but I do not like people who are job hoppers. I do not like people who just keep doing 1 year, 12 months, 18 months, 12 months, 18 months. I do not like these people because I believe unless they're really good and all the companies they have gone are crap companies, right? That is also a possibility, right? They never found the fit and maybe you are the one fit, but that does not say general pattern, right? We go with patterns matching that. But if you trust somebody, so trust, curious, artisan, and who is willing to hustle. Because a startup is all about hustle. There's no established rules. You are the one who orders the food. You are the one who cleans the desk. You are the one who closes the office. You are the one who opens the office. You are the one who does everything. Who orders software? Who does subscription? Who does everything? So they should be able to do that. And if they are ready to do that, then hire those people. Find those people, and you'll find those people very easy. Not a problem. If you look around in Twitter or GitHub or like, I would go to suppose. A lot of times I went to Stack Overflow and just find who is responding too many to these kind of questions, and I'll just go talk to that person, hire that person. And yeah, you are good, you know this, and you are very passionate about, so you are answering and helping people out there.
Right. So actually, you bring up a very important point, right? I mean, I think there was quite a lot of tweets on this just a while back, which is this phenomena of job hopping, right? I mean, now that the market is, fairly hot and, salaries are through the roof and so on, it's very common to find people who have changed like 3 jobs in 5 years, for instance, right? And, obviously, instinctively having spent many decades, multiple decades, the downside of it, but how would you urge these people to reconsider what they're doing?
I can't, honestly. But what I can do is, if I find somebody very good, I would. So whenever somebody leaves you, they usually leave manager. They usually leave the leader. They don't leave the organization. If some good leader has a bad performing team, then it's not a team's fault. It's leader's fault. So whenever somebody leaves, they kind of fired you instead of they're leaving. So I always think like that. So you should talk. You should be very serious. First of all, they're leaving. That means you did not listen to them a lot. And second, if they would have told you, you might have been able to fix things. Like I have personally experienced this myself. Like Gojek's attrition for last 5 years have been lowest, like lower single digit numbers, which is like amazing, right? We were able to build that culture. So why people join? Why people join a company? First, people join company for people. If they don't know the people, existing people who are working in their company, then they join for most probably culture, what they hear about you. So you need to go and tell people what you do, correct? And if they don't know that, if they don't have that, then they join for money. So whoever is joining for money will leave for money. And they leave in the same order. They first leave for money, then the second leave because the culture is not good, and then thirdly they leave because the money people are not good. In other reverse order.
Right.
So when they join for people. Second, they join for culture. Third, they join for money. When they leave for people. They leave for culture. They leave for money. So you need to think through this, and that is something super important. And I can't tell them what to do, but what people should do is think through it. A lot of time people will just stick around because they are just around good people while they're getting so many job offers. Yeah.
That's a great point. That's an awesome point. And one of the skills in becoming an engineering leader or any kind of leader is to hire the right kind of people, retain them, attract the right kind of people, right? And we often find, especially in engineering domain, I mean, people are very reluctant to build those kind of skill sets, right? So, for any engineering leader listening, right, how and why they should prioritize these things, and also how to build up that skill set and that muscle of being able to attract the right people, actively invest in their growth and also enable them to succeed.
So I have found one thing which is very slightly very controversial, is that a lot of time engineering organization or any artisan organization, whether you take engineering, design, PM, any cognitive organization, there is always this intellectual hierarchy rather than the positional hierarchy. People always respect their leaders if they are cognitively better than them, or if cognitively they can listen or learn from them. So first is we should be always ready to teach. That means we should be always be ready to spend some time with our people on the ground. I always did that, and I will still do it if I can. But I would always love to go down and work with them, show them what is the right way to do things, instead of responding in mail saying this is not the way to do a PR. Like in Gojek, we never had PRs, no pull request. Go pair with people and teach them, and you will be very surprised that you learn new things from them, because new blood is so curious. They'll learn new things, and how would you increase your knowledge? You can increase your knowledge from these beacons who can come and tell you. So first is that. So don't think it transactional, but think it as a mostly like a disciple and whatever, like that Gurukul kind of things that you need to, that is cognitive hierarchy you need to establish. First thing is that means you need to learn and be ready to jump in. You don't have to code all the time, but you should be able to, master should be able to show their skills once in a while. I was watching this, watching this Star Wars episode 2, I think, Attack of the Clones or Clone Wars, something like that, right? And in that, the last scene is where Master Yoda, who actually walks on a stick, has a fight scene. And my son was like very intrigued, saying, this guy was just walking with the stick and suddenly he's jumping all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, he's master. He knows, he practices. He can't do it every time, but whenever required, he does it, right? So that is very important. People should know that my leader is there to help me. A lot of times they start losing that trust, that faith, and that's where the problem starts happening very slowly. And a lot of time, we actually focus a lot on process, not on the outcome. If you focus on the process, that means you are not only telling them what, but also telling them how to do it step by step. Correct? You don't have to tell them how. Let them figure out how. It's like if you ask a problem to be solved, problem to get solved by 10 developers, same language, you'll have 10 different solutions. Out of those, 5, 6 will be very elegant. So let them have that. Let them have that freedom, correct? And that is very important. So you should focus on outcome. Now people say, but if they write bad code, what will happen? Then what you should do, should provide some guardrails on the outcome. That means you should also encourage them to write tests. Also put some nice your what I call your constitution, the way to write code kind of thing, saying we want function names to be like this, we want domain names to be like this, we want the interfaces to be defined like this, we want logs to be written like this. Those kind of things are super important. Once you have your constitution, once you have guardrails, then focus on the outcome, not on the process, and that will just be better. But what people do, they actually optimize for output, not outcome. They optimize the output and they control the output through processes. So it kind of becomes very monotonous job. So once that is there, when traditional thing comes in, what we have done, we took the industrial design processes and tried to adopt those to software design. And that doesn't work. That just does not work. So that's the problem. So we need to do a different way of things. It's a cognitive. We create software out of nothing, but with our keyword and ID. So let the people draw the canvas. You shouldn't define the curve and lines and whatever things are there, right? You shouldn't define that.
At the heart of it, I mean, if you kill that joy of problem solving through all of these processes, as you mentioned, I mean, it kind of like kills that kernel itself, right? So it kills the very reason why people do get into software and so on. So that's a great point you bring up, Ajay. Ajay, any other key skills that you feel are necessary for people to transition to being very good engineering leaders as such?
Empathy is one, very important. Not being transition, being very empathetic is very important. Second is you should be able to give the trust from the day one. It's not about earning the trust. It's about the giving the trust. So you should be able to give the trust, and that is not very easy. Third thing is, which is super important, as I said, is that being that cognitive leader, being that intellectual hierarchical leader, that is very important. Positional leadership does not work. Third is you should always watch out for your people. There is a very good, funny book called Managing Humans. It's very funny. People should read about that. Like you are dealing with humans, not with like line managers or people who are sitting on the assembly line. That means you need to talk to them. You need to understand. Like instead of saying how are you doing, why it has not got done, we should move towards how can I help you, or what is the roadblock. So that is empathetic again, right? So those kind of things. So I think communication, connect and communicate, and being empathetic. These are the 3-4 things I see very, very good. I don't believe in like things like soft skills. There's no soft skills. These are just human skills, people skills. There's no soft skills. I hate the soft skills word. So yeah, sorry for that again, rant.
No, but that's I think that's very important. I think by calling it soft skills, I think we kind of devalue it a certain.
It's a default skills.
Yeah, right.
You can't acquire this.
Right. I mean, we would not use it in any different context, right? You would not say that you have to build your soft skills with a friend or with another person. Certainly, but in a professional environment, we call it soft skills. So, Ajay, this has been
bullshit. Sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. So this has been an amazing conversation. I think we have covered various nuances in terms of how to build and also how to attract the right talent and, being an engineering leader and so on. So final question, I know we're out of time. Final question to you. In your opinion, what makes a great engineer, right? And most importantly, what does not?
I don't think I can answer that. But I think I can tell you what I did, and maybe that will help. I always, whatever you focus as a primary thing, always see it as a byproduct. So let me give a simple example. Suppose health is your primary thing, right? Think about health, being healthy is primary goal. But if you think being healthy is byproduct, then what is that input which goes into make you being healthy? So the inputs are eat healthy food and say, I want to go to gym 3 days a week, I will swim 1 day a week, or I'll do this or that. And those are small things which will make you eventually healthy. Because eventually being healthy is like something you don't know. Same way, getting promotion or becoming better is a byproduct. Think about this: earning more money is a byproduct. So what will go into that earning more money thing? That means be nice to people, be optimistic, put yourself in uncomfortable position, always be ready to learn, put your team before you, put your family before you, put your friends before you, and you will earn a lot of people through that, right? I have this motto which says earn people, not money, and I totally believe in that. Look, the output, the byproduct, if you treat money as a byproduct, then you can put a lot of effort. You can figure out what to do to get that byproduct. But if you start focusing on that, like somebody said, if you want to become famous, go kill somebody and you'll become famous, right? But that's not a good famous, that's a bad famous. So once you define qualitative and quantitative stuff, what is a good thing, what is good life, what is good money, what you want to acquire, then you'll start doing very ethical things. And that's what I have been doing all my life. But it's not about just being software engineer, good software engineer. I just say, just becoming a good human. Like leave the leader part of it, leave the software part of it, leave the craft part of it, just being a good human. And then optimizing other things will just help us a lot. And everybody can reach there. Their paths may be different as long as those paths are ethical, not hurting anybody, not upsetting people. Things are good. And I'll tell you one more thing. I'm guilty of that as well. Like I do lose to cool, I do lose temper, I do get angry. I'm trying to improve myself, but try not to hurt people. It's just bad. People don't forgive that. Don't forget that very easy. So yeah, if you do 1,000 good things for somebody, but if you slap them once, they'll remember that slap, not 1,000 good things. So right. Making 1,000 good things remember is just not slap somebody. So I've been guilty of that as well myself. Everywhere. So I'm trying to improve myself. So yeah.
All right. That's a rather profound note to end the podcast on. Ajey, this has been a fascinating conversation. We could talk to you for another couple of hours if possible, but I understand there are time limitations. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Ajey. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot for hosting me. It was amazing to talk to you guys. And glad that we covered a bunch of topics. But yeah, it is just I told you as it's all the I'm the failure of a culmination of all the failures. That's what I told you.
Right. No, I mean people are learning so much from your insights and from your failures. So that's a wonderful thing. So cool. Thank you again.
It's my honor. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, then don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite platform and share this episode with all of your fellow startup operators. Also follow the Startup Operator on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon on a brand new episode of the Startup Operator.